Shin Onigashima was a bit of a problem for this project. The issue is, this is not a single release. Instead, the game was released in two halves, the second half following about a month after the first. So is that 2 episodes or 1? Well, since the second episode would be just this is the same game, I decided to combine all of the 2-disc releases into single episodes. Many of the games are divided up as Zenpen, or first volume, and Kohen, second volume. When others just use Part 1 and Part 2. There are 6 of these 2-part releases, and they've proven to be a bit confusing for people who collect Disk System games. I recall seeing one person online who was very proud to purchase their first Disk System game, a copy of the Kohen for Shin Onigashima, and I had to break it to them that they purchased the second half of a game that wouldn't even start. You can literally translate the title Shin Onigashima to New Ogre Island, but that really doesn't convey the concept here. Onigashima is the location of the climax for the fairy tale Momotaro, or the Peach Boy. Momotaro gets his own RPGs, action games, and board games from Hudson, but it's a folktale, so anyone could release a game based on the character. And in the case of Shin Onigashima, Nintendo smashed together a whole bunch of fairy tales. For ones that play major roles in the story, you've got Kaguya Hime and Kintaro. If you're familiar with Japanese legends at all, you'll be playing this game and going, I understood that reference. Shin Onigashima is divided up into chapters. There's 4 chapters on the first disc, and 5 chapters on the second disc, though that last chapter is an extremely short epilogue. Unusually for these menu-driven adventures at the time, the text in Shin Onigashima is presented in a vertical format, so it's all read top to bottom, right to left. The menu of commands that you choose from appears at the bottom of the screen, and you have the usual look, take, talk, use. In the first chapter, you're playing as an old man and woman who don't have any children of their own. But as they progress the story, they first find a kid in a pot in the river, and then another kid in a golden bamboo stalk, and their children become the protagonists for the rest of the game. Once you're playing as the kids, you can freely switch between them with a new menu command. After the kids do a bit of adventuring in the wilderness, they return home to find that demons have taken their adoptive parents. And that sets off the quest for the rest of the game. Something significant about Shin Onigashima is just how much of it there is. While I was recording, I got to the end of Chapter 3. And of course, I was following a walkthrough to make sure I saw as much of the game as possible. In that time, there were dozens of locations, piles of different characters, and lots of things to poke at or do. A lot of adventure games at this point are still very contained. There might be a dozen locations across the entire game. Shin Onigashima is big, and it feels like there's an entire epic story happening here. When you complete a chapter, it automatically saves your progress, and that throws you back to the main menu. From the main menu, you have the options to start a new game, continue on that first disc, and if you've completed all of the game on the first disc, then you have the option to start the second disc. If you hit start while you play, then you have the opportunity to save your progress right there, but that also takes you back to the main menu. Shin Onigashima is a beloved classic in Japan. It's right up there with the original Zelda when people talk about the best games on the Disk System. And beyond that, it's in the running for the best 8-bit adventure game. As such, Nintendo revisits this one often. It was remade as one of the very last releases for the Super Famicom, and it came on 2 separate cartridges. And the girl from Shin Onigashima plays a major part in Captain Rainbow. As for my take, yeah, if you're going to play any adventure game on the Famicom or the Famicom Disk System, this is the one to play. It's very puzzle-driven instead of event-driven, and most of the puzzles involve knowing the stories and figuring out how to apply them in that situation. There isn't a lot of pick the same command over and over again until something different happens. It also has a very charming tone. For obvious reasons, these kinds of folk tales are popular choices for Japanese text when you're learning the language, and that carries over to the game's script. It's surprisingly accessible. All in all, this is one of the best Nintendo games from the 80s that's effectively unknown outside of Japan.